Historians, this one's all about the rise of big business. And we're going to take this step by step using a couple of rags to riches stories, people that came from nothing and built that into an empire of everything. So just a reminder that after the Civil War, most businesses were owned by just one person, or maybe like a few partners, like 2 or 3 people. And businesses were small because the funds were limited. In order to run a business, you had to have money. You could have just a few people putting the money together. You'd have a small business. And that works well for something like a clothing factory or a carpenter shop or something like that. But for really big businesses, for example, like a railroad company, that is a gigantic business, you need a lot more capital or money to get the thing started. So for instance, this is a map in 1890 of the railroad company or the railroad tracks across the United States. Look how many miles there are. Between 1880 and 1890, there was over 70,000 miles of railroad. So a lot of money needed to be used to lay all of that railroad track. Okay, so here's how they did this. In order to get more money, capital, they created something called a corporation. And a corporation allowed them to raise lots of money, larger amounts of money, because they could have even more people pitching in more money, putting their money together, so they'd have a larger amount of capital that they could produce things like railroads. So a business owned by many people, those people are known as investors, that makes a corporation. Okay, so now we're talking about corporations. So in order to get investors to participate in this, they are buying a piece of the company, a share of the company. And when you buy a share of the company, you are buying stock in the company. Okay, so when you have something like a railroad, let's use Union Pacific Railroad, for example. Let's say that one share or piece of the company will cost you $24. Okay, so you hand in $24 to the company. In return, the company gives you a piece of paper saying that you own one share, one little sliver, one piece of that company. Okay, the company gets their $24. They can use it to build the company up, and you get a small piece of the company. Well, when the value of the company goes up, when it does well, the value of your share goes up. But if the company doesn't do very well, of course the value can go down. So the company does well in this instance, and the value of your share goes up to $40. Okay, so you put in 24. Now that piece of paper is worth 40. But it is only worth that money if you sell that share. Okay, so if you sell it at that moment for $40, you, the stockholder, just made a $16 profit. Okay, and profit is money that is gained from an investment. It could be for anything. Let's say you buy something for $1 and then you go and sell it for $2. You made a $1 profit. Okay, that was the money gained from your investment. If you spent $24 on a share, sold it for $40, you made a $16 profit. So how much profit would you have made if you had bought 100 shares? Okay, each share was $24. You bought 100 of them. I'll give you a second to think about that. All right, did you think about it? If you bought 100 shares at $24 a piece, that's $2,400 you invested. When you sold them for $40 a piece, that is a $1,600 profit. Okay, so you get $4,000 back on your $2,400 investment. Okay, but when you buy that stock, of course, the company could go down in value. If the company does not do well, the value of your share goes down, you would be losing money. Let's say you put in $24 and the value went down to $20. And let's say you sold it at that moment, you lost $4 on your investment. Okay, let's go with one other example. History Core. I've got my brand new company, History Core. It is guaranteed to make all of your dreams come true. You want to invest in this, okay? Give me your money, all right? Right now, one share of History Core just costs $1. Yeah, that's it. Oh, actually, take that back. One share of History Core costs $5. Okay. Anybody want to buy one of these for $5? Yeah, you do. Okay, great. You do too. Here is your piece of paper in return. Give me your $5. Give me your $5. Give me your $5. Okay. Now I take that $5 from each of you and I pile it all up and I go and buy a new factory, some new machines, and I produce some more really great History Core materials. Okay. And the value of our company goes up. The value of your share goes up. Now it actually is worth $10. Anybody want to sell? Anybody want to sell? Okay, you give me your share back. You give me that share back. You give me that share back. And I will give you $10, $10, $10. Okay, you made some money. But if the value of that share goes down to like 50 cents and you sell it now, you've lost $4.50 on each one of these that you purchased. Okay, so you kind of get the idea here. All right, so by the 1880s, there were thousands of corporations doing business just like this. These are all real corporations that existed by the 1880s, 1890s, the time period that we're talking about, and they were created because investors bought shares in those companies. A lot of those you've heard of. Most of them are still around today. They were very successful. Okay, there's something even bigger than a corporation. It's called a trust. And this is when a group of corporations all work together so that they can control the prices and reduce the competition. So these aren't technically trusts, but think about Coca-Cola, Kraft, Nestle, P&G, PepsiCo, General Mills. And now think of all of the things that they own. In Coca-Cola, they also own Monster Energy and Dasani water and Glaso and what else? Fruitopia. Kraft owns all of these. They own like Nescafe and Cadbury, and they own A&W. Okay, so all of these corporations are part of this much larger collection of corporations, and so they can begin to control the cost and reduce the competition if they buy off some of the other corporations. Okay. One more term for you is called a monopoly. And a monopoly is when a firm, maybe like one of these, or even one of these, buys out all of its competitors. And they have either total or near total control of the production, the wages, and the prices. For instance, let's say I made highlighters, okay? And there was another company that was making these other highlighters. And I bought this company, and now I make the highlighters. I can sell these highlighters for any price I want because there's no other place that you can go. I could sell them for 50 cents a piece. I could sell them for $5 a piece because if you want a highlighter, you have to buy it from me. That's a monopoly. Total control of production or near total control of production, wages, the amount of money that I pay the employees to work in my highlighter factory, and the price. Okay, so here's two major success stories along those lines. First one is this guy right above me, Andrew Carnegie. That is the steel company. And right over here, this is John D. Rockefeller. He's got the oil company. So let's start with Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was born in Scotland, 1835. He immigrated into the United States, okay? He was an immigrant in 1848, young kid. His first job was in a textile factory, kind of like the Triangle Shirtwaist factory that we talked about where there was the fire. He made $1.20 a week. He then moved into a new job in a new factory making $2 a week. He's moving up. Then he learned how to operate the telegraph machine. Remember the do-do-do-do-do-do-do? He learned how to operate that, and he was making $20 a month just by teaching himself that skill. He then got a job as an assistant at the Pennsylvania Railroad because he knew how to operate that telegraph machine. They paid him $35 a month. He is moving up, okay? Then he impressed his boss at the Pennsylvania Railroad Company so much that his boss says, "Hey, Andrew, I like your style. I like the cut of your jib. Do you want to buy some stock in our company?" And Andrew realized that the value of the stock was going up, and he spent all of the money he had to buy as much stock in the business as he possibly could. He even got money from his mom. He took her life savings and bought more stock. In 1873, he sold off a bunch of his stock, made so much money that he had enough money to start his own business, the iron business, making iron bars, okay? Remember we talked about the Bessemer process? Remember like a faster way to change the iron into steel. Steel is a better product. You could sell it for cheaper. So between using the Bessemer process and his brains, he was able to create the Carnegie Steel Company. And by 1899, the Carnegie Steel Company was manufacturing more steel than all of the factories in Great Britain combined. Okay, sounds like a monopoly. In 1901, Carnegie sold his U.S. Steel Company to that guy over there, J.P. Morgan, for $480 million. This is a guy that started out making $1.20 a week. Now he sold his company for $480 million, making him, in today's money, the second richest man ever. His value in today's money would be almost $300 billion. So who is the richest man ever? I'll answer that in just a second. So you think, okay, Carnegie has all this money. Gosh, what would he do with all of it? Well, he actually used a lot of it to promote philanthropy. Okay, he's a philanthropist. He's a person who promotes the welfare of others, especially by generous donations of money to good causes. He built over 3,000 libraries across the United States, some of them right here in Minnesota. He built libraries to send out knowledge to the people of the United States. He also invested in colleges and institutions and churches. Overall, he gave away 90% of his lifetime earnings. 90%. Think about that. If you had $300 billion and you gave away 90%, you were still left with just 10%, which is $30 billion. So he gives away 90% and he still has more money than most humans will ever see in their life. Okay. So I asked you, who do you think is the richest man? Well, talked about two major success stories, right? Here's the other one, John D. Rockefeller. He was born in 1839 in New York. His father was a peddler. That means he just sold small items on the street for small amounts of money. Well, John D. Rockefeller's first business endeavor was loaning money. Let's say he only had $1, but somebody else needed that $1. He would borrow or he would loan them that money, that $1, and ask them to pay him back. But he was so good at math and accounting that he figured out ways to collect interest. He gives them $1 to use and he says, pay me back next week, but just pay me back $1.05, okay? That 5 cents he made for just letting someone else use his money. And then he would take that dollar and loan it out to somebody else and make another 5 cents. Okay? So by the age of 19, he started a business with a neighbor. And he profited $4,400 in the first year. That's a lot of money in that time. The second year, they profited $17,000. Okay? And he was on his way up, the rise of his business. He invested in oil because oil was being used all over the place. It was being used to heat homes, light the dark. It was being used coming up here to start to use for automobiles and airplanes. So in 1870, he created the Standard Oil Company, and it processed about 2 or 3% of the country's oil. A lot, but it's not a monopoly. But he found oil refining success by 1880, and he gained near total control of the oil industry. 90% of the country's crude oil came from his company, Standard Oil. This right here, Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. That is a giant building worth a lot of money. So Rockefeller's net worth in today's money, $323 billion with a B. Richest American man ever. Now there are some people that are challenging that now, right? Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and some of those guys. They might end up to that point. But the question is, are they creating monopolies? Because I talked about a monopoly. It's a firm that buys out its competitors. It has total control of production, wages, and prices, or near total control. That's where Rockefeller was. That's where Carnegie was. And we have made new laws in this country that outlaw monopolies. So will those guys that I just mentioned ever become as rich as Rockefeller and Carnegie? We don't know. We'll see. So that is the rise of business, the rise of big business. And the question is, did the benefits of industrialization outweigh the cost? Okay, I just laid out a bunch of benefits. Did those benefits outweigh the cost? Think about the people that worked for these guys. Think about the people that were working in those factories and those oil refineries. Were they benefiting or were they the cost? Okay, that's it. That's the rise of big business. Little introduction, some rags to riches stories. See you next time. Peace.